Hey everyone, so I'm going to be talking about my experience using a target test preps course for my GMAT preparation. So a little bit about myself. I am from India and my formal education has been in commerce, which is essentially business. So it's not too much of heavy math like an engineer would have done. So I knew that I had essentially a little bit of a push needed in both verbal as well as quant in order to get a great GMAT score. And I am applying for master's programs primarily in Europe as well as in the States. And I know that GMAT is a huge component of it, so I realized that a good score is pretty much an essential requirement to get into a good program. So I had started off when I gave the GMAT prior to using TTP, I had got a score of 620. And during my prep for this GMAT attempt, I had exhausted pretty much all of the official guide, and GMAT Club's practice questions, as well as the official mocks. And my mock scores were close to the 700, so I thought that I was nearing the 700 mark. But when I gave the exam, I remember walking out of there thinking I have a lot of work yet to do. And I had always heard of TTP before this, but just like with any other test prep course, I was a little skeptical about going forward with paying for this, considering I thought I could do it on my own. And I finally went through a lot of Google reviews and GMAT Club specifically. There were a bunch of 5-star reviews and a bunch of people who scored 700 using TTP. One special mention I'd like to say is I also looked at someone known as Daniel Cummins on YouTube, and he really raved about TTP, and he had a really crazy experience with the GMAT as a whole, taking it multiple times, and he ended up with a 710. And that was really inspiring, and I decided to go ahead with TTP. And I knew that I didn't have too much time until the application windows opened up. I had about 2 months, and I knew I had a little bit of a way to go. I needed an 80-point increase in about a month and a half. So I took TTP's course for just a month, and I began starting over essentially with Quant. It was like, even though I'd done all of this before and given it before, I started doing every single problem, and I went through those chapters as well as the chapter-wise tests. And I thought that was extremely useful. One thing that I would give immense credit to TTP to is that it's exhaustive as well as structured. So it's not just throwing questions at you. There's a purpose behind every question and every test. And I finished the entire quant curriculum, and I started doing the easy, the medium, and the hard practice tests in each chapter. And I essentially started doing one of each, and moved on until I got the sufficient score or scored well in those tests. And I followed the same pattern for verbal. I knew that of the three, sentence correction, critical reasoning, and reading comprehension, that sentence correction and reading comprehension were my strengths, and critical reasoning was sort of a weakness of mine. But I wanted to ensure that I make absolutely no mistakes, and I'm prepped the best that I can be for SC as well as RC. So I used those resources to the fullest from TTP. I went through, again, all of those little grammar rules, which you think aren't important, but those little questions can make a big difference in your score. So I really exhausted the resources for SC as well as RC. And talking about CR, I would say as a whole, TTP's verbal curriculum is also extremely well structured. And I didn't use as much of it as I would have liked to, because I didn't have a lot of time to use the entire course. I focused on quant because I knew that was where I needed a little bit of a push. And towards the tail end of my prep, I gave the Manhattan mock tests as well as I used TTP's custom tests. And this is when that comes in extremely handy, because essentially going on to the internet and finding sources in different places where you could practice certain questions, TTP's curriculum makes it so much easier to choose custom topics on which you could get yourself tested. And towards the tail end of my prep, like I said, it was just TTP's custom tests as well as the Manhattan mock tests. And I like how it's structured from start to finish, especially using the entire study plan that TTP provides. I picked the accelerated plan with intent to finish it as quick as I could, but I didn't want to skimp out on the quality of my prep. And I thought that was really important. Just rushing it wouldn't make any sense if I didn't get my desired score. And this is the advice I would give to people giving this exam, is there are a lot of people who probably end up getting great scores with very little prep time, but considering everyone is coming from different backgrounds and people have different strengths and different weaknesses, take it slow, but most importantly, be consistent with the time that you have. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. And ensuring that you take your time out and structure the prep, which is essentially what TTP does for you with its entire study plan, is one of the most essential things when it comes to anybody's prep. So to conclude, my GMAT journey was definitely not the easiest one. And I only wish I had found out about TTP sooner. It would have saved me a great deal of time in getting to my desired score earlier than I would have. And any advice that I would give to anyone giving the GMAT or planning to give the GMAT is, of course, trust in TTP. It's definitely the best software out there. Just take your time, be consistent, focus on your weak areas, use the software as it's meant to be used because it's designed really well and it's meant to be easy to use. And I hope you get the score that you desire.